I needed a break from the city, the noise, the people. It had all started to close in on me. So when I saw the listing for a small isolated cabin deep in the woods, I jumped at the chance. A week of peace and quiet, no Wi-Fi, no cell service, just me and nature. It sounded perfect. The drive out was longer than expected. The roads became narrower and more winding as I got deeper into the woods, the trees thickening until they blotted out the sky. I should have been nervous, but I wasn't. I needed this. By the time I arrived at the cabin, it was nearly dusk. The cabin was small, just one room with a bed, a kitchenette, and a wood stove. It was rustic but cozy enough. Outside, the forest stretched endlessly in every direction, silent except for the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind. Perfect, I thought. Just what I needed. The first night was peaceful, though unsettling in its stillness. I wasn't used to the quiet. No city hum, no cars, no neighbours. Just the sound of my own breathing and the crackle of the fire. It took a while to fall asleep, but once I did, I slept deeply. It wasn't until the second day that things started to feel off. I woke up early, the sun barely breaking through the trees, and decided to take a walk through the woods. I figured some fresh air would help clear my head. But as I wandered, I started to notice something strange. The forest seemed to shift around me. I'd turn a corner, only to find myself back where I started. Paths seemed to disappear the moment I stopped looking at them. It felt like the trees were playing tricks on me. I told myself it was just my mind adjusting to the quiet, to the isolation. But there was something else, something deeper. I kept feeling like I was being watched. When I got back to the cabin, I tried to shake it off, but the feeling wouldn't leave me. That night, as I lay in bed, I heard something outside, a soft crunch of leaves. I sat up, listening, but it stopped. I peered out the window, but saw nothing but darkness. The next morning, I found footprints. Not mine. They circled the cabin, disappearing into the trees. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I wasn't alone out here. Someone, or something, was watching me. I decided to leave. I packed up my things, grabbed the keys and headed for the door. But when I stepped outside, the path I had driven in on was gone. The car was there, but the road, gone. It was as if the forest had swallowed it up. Panic set in. I started walking in the direction I thought the road should be. But no matter how far I walked, I kept ending up back at the cabin. The trees were closing in, twisting in ways that didn't make sense. The sun, once high in the sky, barely seemed to move, casting long shadows that seemed to reach for me. By the third day, the isolation became suffocating. The woods felt alive, like they were watching, waiting for something. I stayed inside, trying to ignore the whispers I thought I heard in the wind, the shadows that seemed to shift when I wasn't looking. Then came the knock. 3 slow, deliberate taps at the door. I froze. No one was supposed to be here. My heart pounded in my chest as I stood up, inching toward the door. I opened it just a crack and saw no one. But something was left behind. A note, crumpled and dirty, sitting on the porch. It was handwritten in shaky letters. "Get out before it's too late." I slammed the door, panic setting in. Who had left the note? And what were they warning me about? I locked every window, every door, but deep down, I knew it wouldn't help. The cabin felt wrong, like the walls were breathing, closing in on me. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed by the window watching the trees. At some point, I must have dozed off, because I woke up to the sound of something scraping against the outside of the cabin. Slow, deliberate. I didn't dare move. The next morning, I found more footprints, deeper this time. Whoever or whatever was out there was getting closer. By the 4th day, I was out of food, out of options. The forest had trapped me, and I was starting to lose track of time. The trees blurred together, the shadows grew longer, and the whispers became louder. And then I found it. The journal, hidden beneath the bed. Its pages were yellowed, the ink faded, but the words were clear. Whoever had stayed here before me had written about the same things. The feeling of being watched, the footprints, the disappearing road. But the last entry was the worst. It's not the forest, it's the cabin. It doesn't let you leave. I dropped the journal, my mind racing. It wasn't the woods keeping me here, it was the cabin. I wasn't just staying in it, I was trapped by it. I ran outside, desperate to escape, but the forest was endless. The trees, once familiar, now twisted and gnarled, seemed to close in on me. The more I ran, the more lost I became. And then I saw it. Another cabin, identical to mine. I ran toward it, desperate, hoping it was some kind of mistake. But as I got closer, I realized the truth. It was my cabin. I had never left. I'm still here, wandering the same woods, stuck in the same loop. The cabin watches. It waits. And no matter how far I run, I always end up right back where I started.